Doesn't feel cool, but if it looks cool, that's what matters.
Marvel films are filled with spectacular imagery and otherworldly characters. The special effects teams involved with these productions have done some remarkable work. You might not realize just how much work until you watch the same scenes without the special effects. Let's take a look through some of the most popular Marvel movies to see just how much visual effects come into play. Joss Whedon's 2012 film The Avengers was a major culmination of everything that had come before it.
Sort of like a team. Earth's mightiest heroes type thing.
It took all the heroes we'd come to know and love over the past few years and put them together for an epic team-up movie that blew our minds and captured our hearts. It may shock you to learn that the Avengers crew didn't actually destroy New York City in the process of filming it. I know, crazy, right? While the crew ended up building a number of sets for the actors to interact with, they ended up using a ton of green screen in order to extend the scenery. And as much as you might want to believe Mark Ruffalo is actually capable of transforming into a giant green monster, well, we hate to break it to you, but yeah, that's special effects too. Sorry. In fact, this behind-the-scenes shot of Thor fighting the Hulk from the first Avengers makes for a pretty hilarious image. And while we're on the topic of avenging, let's hop all the way down to 2017's Avengers Infinity War. There are tons of moments that simply look ridiculous without the aid of special effects. But we're not gonna lie, there's a part of us that wishes Josh Brolin was just in the movie walking around like this. Thanos might be one of the film's most accomplished effects, but there's plenty of other great effects moments to marvel at. The fight scenes that end up looking so gargantuan and epic on the big screen are, when you're filming them on set, kind of silly. And honestly, they're not just kind of silly, they can be really silly. It's mostly just actors flailing and spinning and swinging at things that don't exist. But hey, that's why they pay these guys the big bucks, right? At the same time, there's some pretty impressive stunt work being pulled off here too. Star-Lord's flipping over Thanos and attaching an explosive to his back was done practically. Despite the insane amount of green screen here, the sets the actors interact with are real. Combining practical effects with computer-generated effects tends to be the most effective way to do these things. While going through all of this behind-the-scenes footage of the Marvel movies is really awesome, it's also got its fair share of heartbreak. Case in point, Rocket Raccoon.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, Rocket doesn't actually exist. He was made in a computer, and some jerk named Bradley Cooper is the one actually voicing him. Can you believe this nonsense? Still, we have to admit, this photo of Dave Bautista as Drax, sitting next to writer-director James Gunn's brother Sean, standing in as Rocket, is pretty gosh darn adorable. Really though, it's awesome to see just how much practical stuff is here. Like, how about these spaceships? The production crew actually built the cockpits for these actors to sit in, and they move around too. It's like being on the best Disney ride ever. And sure, we've got these standard insane amounts of green screen here, but Zoe Saldana's running? That's all real, people. Where is her Oscar, Academy? But perhaps the best behind-the-scenes photo is this one, which features Chris Pratt and Zoe Saldana on their phones while Kurt Russell snoozes away. And the truth of the matter, Kurt Russell might be the greatest special effect of all. Call us, Kurt. The Marvel movies are full of miraculous effects and displays of computer-generated mastery that leave the other films in the dust. And while we could spend countless hours praising the amazing action and fight scenes, and considering the sheer amount of videos we've released, we probably already have, one of the franchise's most amazing special effects was something far more subtle. That would be the tiny, puny version of Steve Rogers.
I can do this all day.
How did Chris Evans end up on such a tiny body? So there were a couple of elements that came into play to pull off this impressive effect. First of all, there was a double involved. A small, skinny actor named Leander Dini stood in for Evans for a number of scenes. Then they used facial replacement to put Evans' face on that tiny body. This was mostly used for the scenes in which Evans was sitting or laying down. But in other cases, when movement was involved, the effects team used footage of Evans, but just shrank him down. This allowed Evans to act opposite the other actors in the scene, allowing for a more organic performance. All the hard work paid off. The effect still stands as one of the MCU's most impressive. The X-Men film franchise has been going on for nearly 20 years, and while the quality of its films has varied with each entry, there's no denying that when they hit the right stride, they make for some of the best superhero films out there. And hey, speaking of hitting strides, can we all agree that Evan Peters' performance as Quicksilver is one of this franchise's highlights, right? Quicksilver ended up with what is arguably the film's standout sequence. When he, Professor X, and Beast have to venture into the Pentagon to break Magneto out of prison, Quicksilver has to demonstrate the full extent of his powers in order to get them out safely. The sequence was so popular, director Bryan Singer and his crew ended up doing an even bigger one in the film's sequel, X-Men Apocalypse. It might only account for a few minutes of screen time, but the sheer amount of time and effort put into the scene is staggering. They actually set up a camera to move 90 miles per hour through an explosion. Want to hear something even more crazy? The entire 3-minute sequence took a month and a half to shoot. Oh, and by the way, congratulations on making it so far into the video. Why don't you celebrate by hitting that subscribe button? Click the little bell to get notifications whenever we release a new video. Iron Man, the movie that kicked off the Marvel Cinematic Universe, works on so many levels. Its greatest special effect might indeed be Robert Downey Jr. himself.
I'm the best.
But there are also an insane amount of special effects that bring the beloved comic book character to life. Director Jon Favreau insisted on going as practical as possible to ensure the film had a certain gravity and reality. Obviously, this wasn't possible for certain things, but you get the sense that he stuck to this for as much as possible in the first Iron Man film. But obviously, with a character like Iron Man, you're going to have to go the route of computer-generated effects. In many cases, the Iron Man suit wasn't even there. Robert Downey Jr. is only wearing a portion of it with the rest of the suit added on in post-production. That's right, all those amazing scenes with Tony suiting up were just Downey Jr. standing against a green screen wearing a motion capture suit. Remember the scene near the beginning of Iron Man 3 where Tony puts on his suit in bits and pieces? That was essentially Downey Jr. living the dream and dancing on a platform, reacting to things that weren't there, and acting as if all the different suit pieces were colliding with his body. Avengers Endgame is the Marvel Cinematic Universe's biggest movie yet, and rightfully so.
Assemble.
Endgame had plenty of big effects moments. We're talking the big battles and all the crazy time travel stuff, but there's plenty of stuff you might not have realized were special effects. For instance, the Avengers time travel suits? Yeah, those aren't real. Production had already begun without any idea what those suits would look like. So what did the filmmakers do? They decided to film the actors without the suits and then add them in later. Because when you have hundreds of millions of dollars at your production's disposal, you can just do stuff like that. But you have to hand it to the effects team. They did an amazing job with those suits. Seriously, we would have never guessed that those are not real. Doctor Strange is chock full of wibbly, wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. The trippy, psychedelic nature of the character allowed for director Scott Derrickson and his special effects team to go all kinds of crazy when it came to crafting the action centerpieces. Doctor Strange has some of the trippiest imagery in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Derrickson and his crew made sure to include as many practical sets and effects as they could. There's lots of wire work happening and even practical weapons that were replaced by more magical objects in post-production. Some of the most impressive effects were the portals the characters used to get around. Believe it or not, these were done practically. And no, they didn't create real portals that were capable of literally transporting their actors from one place to another. They did, however, build circles of light on set, which they replaced later on with all the fancy sparkling effects. James Mangold's Logan is brutal, emotional, and just plain awesome. The movie can get so brutal and graphic, we can't even show you certain clips. We know, you're a grown-up and you can handle it. We believe you, but we gotta do what we gotta do. Needless to say, there's lots of dismemberings and chopping off of body parts and all kinds of crazy stuff. No, Hugh Jackman didn't actually cut anybody's arms off. All of this, including the claws he used to do the chopping, were added via computer-generated effects. In the film's final moments, when Logan is taking his last breaths, he's pierced through the stomach with a large metal stake. You may find this hard to believe, but Jackman wasn't actually pierced with a large metal stake. This item was added in post later on, and here we were thinking he was totally devoted to his craft. Not committed enough to take a stake to the stomach though, are ya, Hugh, huh? For shame. With Black Panther, acclaimed director Ryan Coogler took the first step into the larger world that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It paid off in spades, resulting in some of the MCU's most successful entries. Like many of the other films on this list, Coogler opted for the practical effect whenever possible. The thrilling one-shot fight sequence followed by an intense car chase at the film's centerpiece comes to mind. Even without the final effects, the behind-the-scenes footage is fun to watch. Or what about the waterfall fight between T'Challa and Killmonger for the Wakandan throne? The blue screen is there, but you might be surprised to see that the cliffs and smaller waterfalls are all practical. And does this topic give you the sudden urge to rewatch all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies? When you sign up for Disney Plus, you can do just that. Click the link in our description to start your free trial today. So, what do you think, Screen Ranters? Did you learn something new about the wonders of special effects? Are there any particular effects that impressed you? Any we might have missed? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all the great content that we are sharing daily.